and we're black. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back, and we're black. Well, we couldn't say that last episode because we weren't all black. The last episode we had of the KJLH Love Zone, we were not all black. All right, a little jokey joke to kick off the show, everybody. Welcome to the Love Zone. We are back. We are here. A brand new month. I cannot believe we are halfway through a brand new year. 2021 seemed like it just started like yesterday, but this is outrageous. Time is flying by so fast. But welcome to the Love Zone. My name is Kevin Nash. I am back from vacation. I got my crew with me. I got my man, Dr. Justin Clardy. How you been, my brother?
Oh, man, it's good. Another day in paradise, man. Another day in paradise. Got to get this McAllen going here shortly, but, another day in paradise.
Good, good, good. And what about the very beautiful Aishia Deal? How are you, my love?
I'm good. Do you know you didn't wish me Happy Mother's Day?
I did. And I was shocked and surprised you did not respond to my text. I was a little hurt about that.
You did?
I swear to God.
I was waiting to go in on you about not wishing me Happy Mother's Day.
I swear to God. I woke up that morning, I said, Happy Mother's Day, and not one response. I know what your excuse is going to be, though.
I got a lot of texts.
No? I think you got a new phone on that day, right?
I have a new phone.
Yeah, you got a new phone. Yeah, but I'll show you. Yeah, I text him like, okay. I was a little hurt about it. I was like, okay, well, maybe it's no big deal. You know, Mother's Day is no big deal to you.
Like me not to respond.
Right. But we took that day off.
I'll keep my smoke to myself now.
We took that day off because of you. You remember we took that day off because it was Mother's Day. We want to celebrate all mothers, and you are a mother. So if you did not get the text message and the Happy Mother's Day text, I'm going to say it right now. Hey, Justin, did you wish her Happy Mother's Day on that day?
He sure did.
Wait a minute. So how did your text go through and mine didn't?
His came later in the afternoon. So it wasn't so many other texts stacked up on his. So his just came right through smoothly.
Okay. So it was before, it was way after you got the new phone and you had to go through the whole iCloud thing to make sure everything was transferred, right?
Yes, fair enough.
Yeah, mine was in the morning. But hey, I show you, I did. I'm like, hey.
I believe it. I believe it.
You know, Aisha showed me no more love at all. I don't get no more good morning text, nothing. I don't know what I did, but it's outrageous.
You know, I am. Hi, guys. Hope you're having a great week.
Right. Hey, listen, we got a very interesting show today, too. I'm excited about it. I want to learn more about polyamory. The audience want to know my thoughts on it. I'm like, it's not about what I think. I'm a learner here. So I'm the old man. I'm the old traditional Ryan Isley guy here.
Old men in the polyamory world, okay? You're not too late. You're right on time.
Listen, I thought my thoughts on relationships and my perspective on relationship was totally non-traditional, right? Until I begin to have conversation with you guys. No, maybe I'm still stuck in tradition.
Yeah.
I can't handle it.
It's gonna be a good conversation. I mean, I think it's a good time to be having it. Just a couple of weeks ago, on the Red Table Talk, Jada Smith and Willow Smith had a conversation with some polyamorists. And polyamory in general has been sort of rising more to the public consciousness in the last 5 years or so. And so I cannot wait to dive into a conversation with our very, 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 very special guest today. PBG, AKA Polyamorous Black Girl across all our socials. Welcome to the Love Zone. Let me just talk a little bit about you real quick, if I may, okay? Alicia Bunyan-Sampson is a registered social worker, an independent filmmaker, writer, consultant, and internet kid based in Toronto, Canada. Shout out to T-Dot. Thanks for staying up with us on the East Coast. She focuses her work on identity as a Black woman, love, trauma, sexuality, and non-monogamy. Her work has been featured by broadcasting companies such as CBC, Bell 5 TV, MTV, Aspire TV, and CTV. And she's currently most known for her digital presence as Polyamorous Black Girl, which initially began as a small lifestyle blog, but has rapidly morphed into a fiercely accessible and educational digital community. So, and she's also my best good friend in the whole wide world. So y'all give me a hand and welcoming PBG to the platform. What's going on?
Hey, man. Hey, welcome to the Love Zone.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Good,
Right.
thank you.
So, I mean, like, we might as well just dive right into it if y'all don't mind. Can we do that?
Yeah, before we do that,
Go on.
let me put the phone number out there too, because the audience may be interested in chiming in tonight's conversation. So the phone number to reach us tonight is 310-910-9676. Choose option number 2 to get through directly to us. The wait time is not too long. 310-910-9676. Option number 2. And I'm going to post it on the screen in about 5 seconds. All right, Jess, go ahead.
Cool. So, I mean, let's dive right into it. PBG, I'll be referring to you as both PBG, Alicia, polyamorous black girl, all of it, okay?
Yeah.
So maybe if you could kind of get us started by saying, you know, what you take polyamory to be, or what is polyamory, maybe for our listeners who might be unfamiliar with the concept.
For sure. So the standard definition that I go with is polyamory is the practice or the desire for multiple intimate relationships with the consent of everybody. So that's it, bare bones for me.
So not intimate. So you say multiple intimate relationships. Is there a difference for you between, like, I don't know, like intimate relationships and what people might call romantic relationships, or?
Well, it's a great question, right? Because I think that's the great thing though about polyamory, right? Is because I think it really breaks apart like our ideas like around like romance, right? Like all the razzle dazzle involved in relationships, and it's really focused on like connection, right? Like if you're really messing with somebody, if it's close, whether it be platonic, sexual, a mixture, whatever you want. If you feel secure and connected with somebody, that's an intimate relationship, whatever you decide that is. It could have romance in it, it could not.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, I get that, and I appreciate that definition, right? I think that, you know, it maybe makes it a little bit more expansive, you know, like some people think like, oh, you know, polyamory, multiple boyfriends, multiple girlfriends, but it seems like what you're saying is maybe multiple boyfriends, multiple girlfriends, but also maybe just friends or just other people that you're close to or something like that. Okay, yeah, I can get that. So you go by polyamorous black girl, right?
Yes.
There's so much in the name, right? You have polyamorous, you have black, and you have girl, right? And I'd like to talk about each of those identities, if you will, and maybe how they intersect for you, right? Maybe starting with sort of like a gendered piece, right? I hear a lot of times when women in particular say, oh, they're polyamorous, like other people may say, oh, this is a side chick. What, like, have you heard that? Is this, and how does that go? Or, yeah, anything there?
Okay, so there's a lot. There's a lot in there. So, okay, so I'm gonna get to the side chick thing because I have lots to say about that. But just to begin around, so I came up with the name like polyamorous black girl, right? Because those are all of my identities. And I began writing online about my experiences because I feel as though all of my identities are in direct conflict with one another, right? So being a black woman, there's all of these different things I have to navigate through in society, white supremacy, all that good stuff. And then you tack on polyamory to that, and that complicates those things simultaneously. There's a lot of social scripts, I think, for Black people, on how we are to engage in intimate relationships and romantic relationships. But then for Black women, I think it's heavier in a lot of ways. Well, for Black men and women, it is heavier when we're talking about love and relationships and value. And so when I came up with the name, I wanted to talk about all of those things together and talk about how white supremacy and whiteness shapes the ways in which we come to love and experience one another, right? And so when I hear side chick, right? I've heard it a bunch of times, right? I've been called a side chick. I've been called a home wrecker. I often find that side chick and home wrecker.
Wow.
One another. Well, with that, I think that's how a lot of people look at polyamorous Black women, right? Like as this threat to relationships, as somebody who's disruptive, right? And so whenever I hear like side chick, I always want to ask the person like, what are you talking about exactly? Like, what does that mean? So I'd actually throw it back at y'all. What does side chick mean? Like, what do you guys think side chicks are?
I mean, it's a secret. It's a secret relationship outside of your marriage or your commitment. Someone on the side.
So I feel like oftentimes I feel like for me though, when it's been used, it is people who don't understand non-monogamy a lot of the times. And so they assume that if I'm in a relationship with a married man, let's say, that must be this secret, disruptive, perverse thing that his wife must not know, and I must be the side chick, right? Even though I'm communicating polyamory, even though I'm communicating non-monogamy, folks can't conceive of that as possible. So I must be a side chick. And I think sometimes that is the case, right? Like, does infidelity occur and are there people engaged in unethical non-monogamy? Absolutely. But I think there's a larger percentage of the population that's engaged in ethical relationships, but it's not legible for folks. It's not recognized. So they dismiss it and call folks side chicks or side dudes. Like if we look at the August Alsina Jada situation, right? People were really calling him, a side man, that he, went in on their marriage and he's disrupted this, he's wrong, all of these things, even though folks are talking about like, no, we chose this is what we've decided to do, but it's not legible for people. People can't wrap their minds around it for a lot of reasons.
My question is, you know how you start watching a movie and they start at one scene and then they'll say 3 months before? I want to drag you back to the beginning. How did you know that this lifestyle was for you? Like what happened that made you say, okay, this is the type of lifestyle I want to live? I mean, did you just like one day, were you talking to someone who was in it? Did you read something? Like what kicked it off?
You just took my question, Aishia, because I want to go back to the genesis. I mean, how did it all start?
Yeah.
Who introduced you to this concept? Because I'm sure you wasn't raised like this at all, right? I'm sure you came from a traditional family.
It was all a dream, right?
So I think for me, when I like reflect on how I got to PBG, to polyamorous Black girl, right? Like I've always been non-monogamous, right? Like monogamy has always been strange to me, right?
How old were you at that time?
How old?
Yeah, how old were you at that time? Like when it first started to form, how old were you? Like college, high school?
I want to say, how old are you when you first start thinking about boys? And I want to say elementary school is really when I began to vocalize, I guess, non-monogamous desires, right? And then I learned socially, right, because people begin to shame you about those things, that wanting multiple people at one time, being attracted to multiple men at one time is unacceptable, right? It's socially unacceptable. But naturally, there's an abundance of love for me. I never really understood why there was something wrong with me desiring everybody, right? So, but I kind of shoved those feelings down, and I, grew, engaged in monogamous relationships. And then it was when I got to college that I started to meet people that identified as non-monogamous. And that was the first time I learned that it was a thing that I was allowed to do, right? Like I had these ideas about relationships in my mind, but I had nothing that told me it was okay to be non-monogamous, that it was okay to have multiple relationships, until I met non-monogamous folks. And then I got deeper into the community. I learned about polyamory. I learned about all the terms, and then here I am.
Yeah. I mean, I bet some of the audience is probably just responding to that. Maybe you have somewhat of commitment issues, like you cannot commit to one thing.
Oh, here we go.
I'm just saying what the audience might be saying, just some of their questions too. I'm sure you heard that.
I've heard so many times that it's like very irritating at this point, because it doesn't make sense to me, right? Like it does not make sense at all, because it's like, what's commitment, right? Like it's agreements, right? You decide, you have an agreement, you're committed to this thing. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to engage in this relationship. So me saying that I can have multiple relationships, I have the capacity, I'm in the practice of multiple relationships, is not a lack of commitment. It's actually a very strong commitment. So people saying that like being polyamorous means that you have commitment issues just doesn't add up to me.
And if I may, I think another helpful, so I think PBG, what you said there was really helpful. I also think that this concern doesn't arise when we talk about parents who have multiple children, right? We can kind of easily conceive of parents having equal, multiple commitments to their children. And these are commitments that might be even rooted in love.
Right.
But same thing with our friends, right? We don't think that, because you have more than one friend, that you have commitment issues because you have more than one friend, right? And so I think that if we look at other relationships throughout our lives, some of them that exist more than one, right? We have more than one friend, some people have more than one kid. It doesn't seem to complicate or raise questions about commitment in the same ways that romantic love does. And I find that curious. Just as I think that you're saying, I think, yeah.
It's very curious, and I'm glad you said that, because I also, like whenever I do interviews, the commitment thing comes up, but also jealousy, right? Like that's always the question. Like, how do you manage jealousy? Like, how is that for you? And I was like, how? Well,
that's more insecurity, though. I mean, jealousy is insecurity. So if you're not insecure, then I could see polyamory working. If you're not insecure.
Right.
And I feel like broadly though, like folks know how to manage jealousy in their lives, period, right? Like if you're at work and so gets a promotion or had whatever is going well in their life, and you feel jealous, you know how to deal with that, and you're not going to have an outburst, right? And I think
Joe Budden might, who knows?
Right, facts. But it's kind of like when people think about non-monogamy, they just think that, or polyamory, that jealousy is just like this massive problem, and I could never be polyamorous because I just be so jealous and I don't know what to do with that. But it's like, you do know what to do with that. Folks do know how to deal with jealousy, but it gets complicated for whatever reason.
Are there
I think it's a misconception too. Go ahead, Kevin.
Are there any parameters within polyamory at all? Any parameters?
What? So can I ask you why?
Can I get a boundary? Kevin's like, can I get a boundary, please?
Like, to me, because I was going to ask that same question too. I was going to ask that same question, that maybe you would have to be void of jealousy, so you would offer the same liberties to your mate, your partner, say, hey, look, I'm sleeping with 6 people. Yeah, but I'm sleeping with 10. And you're absolutely cool with that. Like, because there are no parameters. What are the parameters in that kind of relationship?
I mean, it depends on the relationship, though.
It depends on what you've negotiated with that partner. Is that what it is?
Absolutely.
Okay. So are you open and down for any and everything as long as it's communicated?
Here's the thing.
I'm just saying, listen, are you open and down with anything? Listen, all I got to do is just communicate, and this is what I'm doing.
And I feel like this is the key. And I think this is the tea with like monogamous people, right? Like at the end of it, I feel like for y'all, it always boils down to sex, right? Like, and because I feel like that's the back end of that question, right? Like, it's like, well, how many people are you allowed to have sex with? Are there limits to the sex? That's really like what it's about. And it's like, when we have relationships, right, we negotiate what that looks like depending on who we're with, right? Like, it's not a free for all. Nobody has just these massive relationships where anything goes, right? You figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and you discuss that with whoever you're relating to, right?
Well, I'm sure sex got to be at the top of the list. So when you are communicating with your partner, that's the first thing that you guys are talking about is sex, right?
Is it?
I think so. I mean,
so
when you meet people and you go on dates, the first thing you say is like, so how we having sex?
Well, I mean,
so when the last time you had sex?
But I think that's important. I think that's important. Maybe we don't have those type of conversations in the beginning, but we should.
I mean, but what if I'm asexual? What if I'm asexual?
Then that lets me know that I'm not down with you at the beginning, right? I'm moving on.
Right.
Then we don't have to talk about number 2, number 3, and number 4. You know what I mean? Let's get number 1 out the way, and then hey.
What happens, Alicia, if you fall for someone who is monogamous, like by accident? Maybe a friend, because it happens.
It could
right?
happen.
Like you can hang around someone for a right amount of time. You can develop feelings. So, have you ever felt for someone who was monogamous?
Oh yeah.
Have you had a man who just wanted you to himself, and he's like, "Listen, I don't want to engage in that. Like, I just want it to be us." Is there any wiggle room, or are you 100%?
Let me ask
Justin. You can answer this too.
Let me ask you a question. Hence the reason for her name. She's letting you know in the beginning. You know what I mean? polyamorous black girl.
But you never, like, feelings and emotions happen and we can't always control them. So I'm just saying, when someone finds themselves really falling in love with you guys and they're like, I don't want to share. And you're like, but we get along so well and we have great communication and the connection is good. The sex is good. Are you in conflict? Do you start a monogamous relationship? Or do you just continue on and see if he'll convert or she'll convert over?
So, yeah.
Wait, first of all, converting makes it sound a little culty.
I'm about to say, sound like a
very,
cult.
very
I want to be very careful.
But mentally, for someone who is thinking monogamy, of course, their mind may not be, when you say polyamorous, it's like, what, polygamy? It's like, no, two different things. So I'm trying to learn all of this. What happens when someone loves you and they're monogamous, or they want you to themselves?
Okay.
Well, you love them too.
Yeah, so for me, I'm not opposed to dating monogamous people, right? I find in my experience, it is more challenging for them than it is for me. And so I do tend to avoid those kinds of relationships because it's just like a high level of labor that I sometimes just don't have the capacity for. But if I were to be in that situation, ultimately, like, I'm always going to be polyamorous, right? But and I think Dr. Clardy said it in his Jubilee interview, is that it's not like a numbers game, right? So if I find a situation with somebody where the vast majority, or perhaps all of my needs are being met, right? Like I'm sexually satisfied, we're emotionally connected, we're secure and all of that. Could I see myself agreeing to a time, to a certain type of setup that would make them feel comfortable? Perhaps, right? Like maybe, right? Like that really depends. Do I see myself committing to that type of setup for the rest of my life? Absolutely not. But I am willing to do things to make a person that I love and care about feel comfortable so they can adjust to a non-monogamous life. But they can never have the expectation that I'm going to become monogamous just because I love them.
It ain't gonna ever happen, right? It's not happening.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that point about sort of like comfort and how you lay it out there. I want to make sure we don't miss the extent to which, again, this is still a gendered conversation. So, Aishia pitched the question to me, and I think that I have similar politics as PBG on this one. I think that I too have no issue committing to monogamous people or, undertaking monogamous commitments of my own, because I think that I'm an agent and I'm able to choose, especially as long as we talk about what the terms of the relationship are. Now, here's the trick. I'm a man, right? PBG is a girl, right? And so, and I'm heterosexual. PBG, I don't know, whatever, but I'm heterosexual. So that means that I'm dating women, right? And so the position that I occupy as a man in the society might extend to me some privilege where some people might say, well, it's a little bit easier for me to find women who might be okay with having
really
sharing me. Yeah, but when it comes to men, for example, so for PBG, I'd imagine her coming to certain men, right, with this proposal, and
that's
then
what I wanted to know.
Yeah. So I don't know.
How is it dating? Like, I know finding, having black men occupy a very small percentage in this country, in this world. Then you try and find one that is in the the polyamorous world. How long are you single in between meeting people? Because I would imagine it takes a while to come across a man, especially a black man, who's okay with it. Or is it becoming more common?
So there's lots of gaps.
And do you date white men also?
There we go.
Yeah.
So a few things there. So for me, there definitely are a lot of gaps between when I have kind of like formal partnerships, and I kind of want to be clear about that around. I think there's formal partnerships where we're saying like we're boyfriend, girlfriend, we're dating, but I also acknowledge all different kinds of relationships, right? Like there's something called a comet in polyamory, lover, boo, whatever, right? So I find those connections are a lot easier for me to access with Black men rather than formalized partnerships. Definitely in my experience, Black men are far more comfortable with like a polygamous setup than they are a polyamorous setup, right? Yeah. So it's okay for them to have multiple partners, but they take
That's what I was gonna say. I wanted to make sure that polyamory wasn't men get to have multiple women, but the women you know, don't have that same access or can't find the same type of polyamorous men to date.
Yeah, but I definitely, because of my relationship politic, right? Like I don't date white men, and further to that, I don't date Black men that date white people, right? So my politic has actually limited my dating.
But that's true. Okay.
Dating pool quite a bit, right? And you know, part within the polyamorous community, a lot of Black men are engaged in relationships with white women, like quite a few.
Really? Okay.
Right. And that's just not something I'm interested in. All right. I try to limit my interactions with white people as much as possible. And so I'm just not interested in having those kinds of relationships. And so, yeah, it is for me quite challenging. And because I don't have access to what Dr. Clardy has access to, right? Because I do think Black women are more willing to explore than Black men are.
PBG, sound like there's a vetting process. Kind of describe your vetting process.
My vetting process, well, the first thing is do you date white people? That's first.
That's number one.
You got to get that out the way, because if we don't have anything to talk about if you do, right? And then also just around language, right? Like it's if I'm talking to a guy and I explain polyamory and then he starts hitting me with polygamy, red flag, I'm out, right?
I think you hit me with a red flag too. I think you were the one who kind of, told me the difference between polygamy and polyamory on that Facebook Live page. Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. Because I was a bit confused about the two. Yeah, I was confused.
Can you explain to us, Alicia, the difference between polygamy and polyamory?
Yeah, so polyamory is multiple relationships with the consent of everybody, right? And it's not around gender, whereas, and it's not about gender and it's not about marriage, right? Polygamy speaks directly to spouses, right? So marriages. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, it's polyandry is multiple husbands, yeah. And what's the other one?
You said polyandry?
Polygyny is, yeah.
I'm writing these terms down.
So it's really about marriage and multiple spouses.
Okay.
So what about how many men have you gotten to know or dated at one time, as far as like boyfriends or people that you like 3 or 4? Because I would imagine 2 men are kind of hard to balance and juggle. So like, do they get possessive over you sometimes? Like, how many guys have you, at least not sexually, I mean, how many guys have you been with, at a time in a relationship, not sexual?
Well, wait. So all relationships that you've been involved in is all sexual anyway, right? I don't
want to be always assuming,
No,
I wouldn't know.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, some of the most fulfilling relationships I've ever had in my life have been non-sexual relationships.
So the partners that you've had, there's some no sex.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
But I also want to break that apart, right? Like this idea of formalized partnerships, right? Like I think in a lot of ways I have somewhat of a relationship anarchist politic, right? In that I'm not super concerned with titles, right? And what we're calling this, right? I'm interested in whether or not I feel safe and secure in this relationship, right? So whether we good friends, and sometimes we have sex, sometimes we whatever, lovers, whatever the case may be, right? Like I identify those as relationships, and I'm less interested in calling them this is my man, this is my boyfriend. I don't really care about all of that.
So just eliminate the partner, boyfriend. You're not my boyfriend, you're not my partner, you're just someone I'm dealing with at the moment.
I think that it could be the case though, right? I mean, it could be the case. So think about the point. So it makes me think about the point that PBG was just mentioning about making someone comfortable, right? So if labels and titles maybe would make this particular person comfortable, maybe she might be amenable or negotiable to maybe saying, hey, we can call this whatever, and if that'll make you comfortable.
Right.
But I understand her to also be saying is that for her, there's no power or sort of governing feature about the label itself. So it's not that just because we're calling this partners or boyfriend or girlfriend or friend or whatever, that we're locked into only one set of actions, right?
Exactly.
Things like, oh, you're friends, therefore you guys aren't having sex. Well, she's saying, well, no, friend doesn't mean that, because what about friends with benefits? What about friends, right, who you do have sex with? Or
so when you're ready, Justin, to like have children, maybe you guys don't want them or not, maybe, but when you're ready to have children, do you find the person that would you ever make them your anything, or it's just you will find someone that you like, who you trust will be a good parent? Do you want kids, Elise?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so is that how it works? You find one person who you feel shares your morals and your lifestyle, and you guys have a baby? How does that work when you want to build a family?
I mean, I think it works in the same way it does for monogamous people, right? Like, I think it's like that simple for me, right? Like if I meet somebody, if I have a relationship with somebody and that we both want to have a child, then we will have a child, right? It's not super complicated. And I also I don't believe in this idea of like the nuclear family, right? And so I'm open to—
What does that mean, the nuclear family? Just
girl, boy, baby, right? And marriage. You know, like I come, I'm West Indian, right? Like my family's from Guyana, and I came from a blended family. You know, my parents came into their relationship with children from previous relationships, you know, aunties, uncles, friends, homies, stayed in the house, right? Just very community oriented and community based. So my ideas about having children and how those children are to be raised is not contained to like dyadic relationships. It's far more expansive than that. So when I think about having children, I think I want to have children with people that I love and who love me and who want to have kids, and that's it.
And I think, I mean, there's like, I think an interesting point there too, maybe, about just the historical family structure as it pertains to sort of Blackness, right? Again, I think I love your handle. I love polyamorous Black girl because it's so rich. It gives us so many different angles to return to and talk about. And so that Black piece, right? I think it's important to mention that, you know, Black families have always been subject to being broken up in the American context, you know, by law. Here I'm talking about slavery, right? Where families could literally be broken up tomorrow of none of their own doing, right? And so I think that family structures in general, but also family structures for Black people Black people in America have always been like, I don't know, juxtaposed to that norm of what you say, Alicia, the nuclear family, boy, girl, baby. And yeah, I mean, even still today, right? I mean, I think the American prison industrial complex is also responsible for breaking up many Black families. And so when we think about the family structure, I think it's always hard for me as to sort of like, what might people be meaning, right? Is it, you know, yeah, I mean, that's...
How old were you, Justin, when you realized that you wanted, or the polyamory lifestyle was for you? How old were you? And what was the aha moment? You know what I mean? Like, what happened where you like...
So for me, it was around the birth of my first child. So it was, you know, for me, thinking about, in some senses, the kind of example, right? Like that might be set, and in that relationship that I had with his mother, I wasn't always a good partner, right? Because of the unethical non-monogamy that some people mentioned, right? Or that PBG was mentioning earlier. And yeah, it just didn't seem like it boded well. And there was a choice, I think, that needed to be made as to, you know, was I gonna double down on monogamy or was I not? You know what I mean? And at that time, I was around 22-ish years old, and I couldn't really see the doubling down on monogamy, which actually brings me to my other question. I'm interested in what you have to say, Kevin, and Aishia, as well as PPG. You know, when we think about monogamy, what are PPG, I guess, for you, some of its shortcomings, or for Kevin and Aishia, what is the value that is found in monogamy as opposed to multiple relating? I mean, this question is for the floor.
I would pick that up too, because I think I'm the oldest on the panel, right? Being 50 years old, I think I expressed to you earlier that I don't have a whole lot of energy left, and to divide divide yourself in many different ways, in many different directions. You know what I mean? I mean, it's hard dealing with one, let alone 2, 3, 4, and 5. You get what I'm saying? Even if even if we're honest, even if there's loyalty at play, it's impossible for me to divide myself and my energy in so many different ways, in so many different directions. It just takes up a lot of time and energy to do that. That's where I am with it. So I'm all for monogamy. Like if I can pour everything, all of my resources, my energy, my purpose, my time, everything into one, that's where I am.
Okay.
Are you fully satisfied?
At this age, yes.
Yeah, let's get down to the dissecting of Kevin's mind.
At this age, you know, and like I said,
I always wonder that, right? Like with folks, like are you actually having all of your needs met, right? Because I think there is this idea within monogamy that like one person can be your everything and provide
I don't think that's possible.
for the sexual satisfaction that you need, emotional connection. And it's like sometimes the people that we love like dearly don't have the things that we need, right? And I think people lean into their, you know, their friendships for those things. And it's like, well, it sounds like poly to me. Like, why not?
It sounds like poly when you have friends that will help you do other things. Like, come on.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Yeah, to me, because I think other relationships, right, Kevin, even with your main squeeze, your one, I mean, isn't it the case that you also want this person to be a friend to you?
That person is also a friend.
Right, and so that's, I think, the same thing that PBG and Aishia are saying here. Like, yeah, of course, you could lean into a friend because you at one point leaned into this now romantic partner in this way as well. You know, does that make sense?
Not really.
No. Okay.
Not really.
So I guess
I love him.
At the point in time, I think where, you know, people, like, you get to know people, right? There's a friendship usually, and even the romantic piece usually contains a friendship as a part of it. And so, Kevin, I thought your question, Kevin, was, well, why would you lean into a friendship for that kind of emotional support? Well, I'm going to say, well, prior to you guys formalizing your relationship and say, hey, we're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend, hey, we're going to be husband and wife, whatever, you guys were friends, and all that already intimacy was already being shared and established in exchange, even in the friendship.
Right,
so
right.
The question becomes, why is it so hard to conceive that if one has a girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse, that they also might be pouring some of this emotional energy into their friends?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like it's just you're dating a lot of people at one time, or getting to know, 4 or 5 people at one time, which is what people should do when they're single. To me, I mean, you should date and get to know multiple people. It just sounds like polyamory is like, I'm not going to be put in this box.
Exactly.
So I'm going to love you. You're going to be my friend, my lover, my ace, my roll dog. But then this guy over here or this girl over here is also my safe place.
Exactly.
That's what it sounds like.
So
absolutely.
for PBG,
and I feel like to speak to like some of the shortcomings of monogamy, for me, it's like this idea of the relationship escalator as opposed to a relationship landscape, right? And so I think in monogamy, it's kind of like you meet somebody.
Could you say that again?
Say that one more time, please.
So I think the shortcomings of monogamy is that it's focused on the relationship escalator as opposed to the relationship landscape, which is what polyamory is.
Okay.
Right?
You date and you head for marriage. And
exactly.
And then you start going like this.
But that's the thing. That's how people, I find, monogamous people that I know, that's how they gauge whether or not the relationship is a success, right? So it's like if you're in the boyfriend-girlfriend stage for, 5, 6, whatever, that may be a failure because you haven't graduated to marriage, right? And when you graduate to marriage, that's when, okay, the relationship's really valuable. And when you have a kid.
Like milestones you have to hit and you have to define yourself.
Exactly.
It's like that. It's like that KISSING. First comes love, then comes marriage, baby and the baby carriage. We find this example, I think, in the work of Carrie Jenkins, which is a dear colleague of mine. So, yeah, it just made me think of that. Go ahead. I'm sorry to.
No, it's okay. And I think that's a massive shortcoming of monogamy because I really think it cuts you off to all of the possibilities that you can have relating to people, right? Like not every relationship you have needs to turn into that, right? Some people don't even want to get right? Some people aren't supposed to be your boyfriend. Some of the most fulfilling relationships I've had have been with men who there's no commitment, there's no anything. They maybe come and go from my life, but I'm really, really fulfilled. And I learn a lot about myself from allowing myself to relate to them and love them and have sex maybe or whatever.
The phones have been ringing off the chain. We have yet to go to the phone lines, so and people hung up. So here's the deal. Call us back. 310-910-9676. But the conversation was just so heated, I didn't get to the phone lines quick enough. So call back 310-910-9676. Choose extension number 2 if you want to chime in. Go ahead, Dr. Clardy.
Now here's my thing too, Justin, and I'm going to say it right, PBG. I got it in there. I had to like save the letters in mine. But
think of peanut butter.
Monogamy. Yeah, PB&J, yeah, PBG. The thing about monogamy is that I feel like it's getting worse. Like it's becoming more and more about possessiveness and control, even more so than when I was younger. And so it's almost like social media has fed this insecurity, and it just pumps out this insecurity, and the people are just inhaling it and taking it in, and they're so focused on making sure their other partner doesn't want anyone else and doesn't look at anyone else, and it's impossible to control another person. So monogamy is starting to just seem a little bit too obsessive, messy, and insecure, not to mention jealous. Yeah. So I can see you guys don't have that much in your culture. Monogamy is a hot mess.
But that's not my definition of monogamy. That is definitely not my definition of monogamy.
Been like that.
It's not my definition. I'm just saying like that's what it's getting worse, I would say.
Yeah, I think that jealousy, because like, again, I can't emphasize enough that and I think PBG said this earlier, that we get jealous in all kinds of contexts. You can get jealous of a friend, right? On a basketball team, if he's starting on the team and you're not, you might be jealous, like you want that starting spot. Or you could be jealous of a coworker who gets a promotion that you wanted. Right. I mean, you don't get that. Or you could be jealous of a friend or a sibling, right? They got the new shoes and you didn't, right? And so I think that what this might signal to us is that it's nothing about the romantic relationship style itself that makes jealousy come out. It seems to be more of a personal thing. So if you're a jealous person, right, it might be the case that you're gonna find yourself jealous across these contexts, right? As opposed to just being in this monogamous relationship and that making you jealous, right? If you have some insecurities about whatever the case might be, I think there needs to be some personal work, maybe, that needs to be done alongside your relationship. I'm not this proponent of like, people say, oh, well, you got to do all of the healing first and then come to a relationship. I really don't think that life is that smooth. Right. You can do all of your healing, come to the relationship and like, all right, I'm fully healed. I'm ready to do this. Let's fall.
I ain't got no cracks. I ain't got no chips.
Right.
I'm old.
Right. Let's fall in love now. Right. I don't think that. I think that we're people, human beings, right, are always in a process of healing, always in a process of trying to improve themselves, right, and trying to improve their virtue. Right. So you get people wherever they are in that journey, and you guys have discussions and conversations about the kind of relating you're going to want to do. But it's not, I don't think that there's anything about the relationship style itself that makes people jealous, right? I think that insecurity in some senses might contribute to making people jealous more, more than the relationship style.
And I think the setup though, and this is my thing of why I will always be polyamorous, is that I think the setup of monogamy kind of encourages and supports jealous feeling, the reaction that you have from jealousy. So like expressing jealousy in kind of like this toxic and unhealthy way, and making your jealous feelings your partner's problem, right? I think that's just like a normal practice in monogamous relationship. And so it's like reasonable when you go out and your partner's looking at somebody and you have this outburst, and that's seen as acceptable because you're in a monogamous relationship and you're not supposed to look at anybody. When in fact it's rather ridiculous, right? I think like when your attraction for others doesn't turn off just because you're monogamous. You're gonna see other people.
For the audience, let's talk about.
We got a caller?
Yeah, we do have a caller. Let's go to the caller first, but I do have a question too. All right, caller, you're on with us. Go ahead. What's your name and where you calling from?
My name is Tasha, and I'm calling from Brooklyn.
Hey, Tasha from Brooklyn, how are you tonight?
Hey,
I'm doing good, and yourself?
Good, good, good. You have a question or a comment tonight for the panel?
I had
A combination of both? Okay, well, go ahead.
so the question is, when it comes to raising awareness about Black monogamy, how do you, I guess, balance the stigma of being quote unquote turned out or it being just for men?
Did you guys understand the question?
Kevin?
Can you repeat? Tasha, can you repeat that? Tasha, you there? Dr. Clardy, did you hear it? Did you hear the question, Dr. Clardy?
Yeah, it seemed like it seemed like what she was saying.
I have put it on.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tasha.
No, I was just basically saying, like, how do you battle the stigma of polyamory or polygamy or any of it just being a thing where it's just structured for men's pleasure, or the fact that if you are a Black woman and you're participating, then you must have been turned out or something along the way, as opposed to you just adopting a lifestyle.
I can see that.
Great question. Go ahead, Dr. Clardy or PBG.
Okay, so for me, so I do a lot of therapy. That's like first off. I think that's like really, really, really important. But also like I have a community, right? Like I have deep and close connections with folks who understand me and who live in the same way that I do. And you know, my platform gives me a lot of great conversations to counteract that stigma. I mean, I think it is something real, and it's something that is very like exhausting. And at points of my life, it's made me consider like, oh, maybe I should just pretend to be monogamous. So I because you know, I don't want to be thought of as a whore, right? And that's often what it is, right? Like that I am just throwing myself all over the place and having, you know, I don't have any standards, and I don't believe in commitment and all of these things. It's very, very challenging. It's very, very daunting, right? Especially when you're looking for partnership and connection, right? And so for me, battling the stigma is being really deeply rooted in who I am, and that there's nothing wrong with being polyamorous at all. This is a choice that I've made for my life that's deeply rewarding, very fulfilling, and I believe makes me better. It makes me a better person, makes me a better friend in all of these ways. And so just talking about it and really connecting with my community and reminding myself I'm not doing anything wrong. That's how I battle.
You know, there's pros and cons to everything, right?
If I may piggyback off of that.
All right, go ahead.
I think that I appreciate and I recognize and receive everything that you said, PBG. And I think that this is such an excellent question because I don't think that the overcoming of this stigma is a process that belongs only to the women that are subjected to it, right? I do think that this is a stigma that is imposed from the outside. Oftentimes it is imposed onto people by others, which means it's a social problem, right? It's a social and it's a political problem. And I say that to say, at least in heterosexual relationships, I think that there's also an obligation that polyamorous Black men have to help combat that stigma, right? And so one of the things that I've been really vocal about is rejecting this, what we call in the polyamorous community as OPP, which is one penis policy, right? I think that when you open up your relationships with women and say that, hey, you know, I'm okay, I will be okay, right, with you having other male partners. I think how that positions men is it makes them confront their control. It makes them confront their possession. It makes them confront a lot of the things that are rendered toxic about some masculinities and some monogamies. And it
some of it is biblical too, though.
You said some of it is biblical?
Mm-hmm. Like as far as like, you know, because in Christianity, of course, you know, we're taught that it's a one man, one woman. So a lot of people, even more than society, their religious beliefs that, you know, as I grew up Christian, so you grew up in church all your life, that's what you're told, that's what you believe. Do you know what I mean?
But yeah, no, absolutely. So I do think that religion factors into that. I do think that Black men have an obligation, to reject OPP. But also, media plays a role in it too. I mean, how we're taught about love and sex, it is sort of like one-to-one to one-to-one. And that's why I love Meg Thee Stallion, right? Because I think that her content and her media is actively rejecting or curbing that stigma. Does that speak to the question, caller? Or did we still got the caller?
No, she hung up. She hung up. Oh. Hey, but listen, let me ask this question too, because there are pros and cons to everything, and all I'm hearing about is just the pros. I mean, when I hear these commercials late at night, these drug commercials, Zularics, you know what I mean, talk about all the great benefits of this drug, and at the very end, in a fast-paced voice, they talk about, there are no benefits to it. Like this is going to jack up your kidney. You know what I mean? You will get high blood pressure. Exactly. So what is the disclaimer? Let's talk about some of the cons and some of the things that you guys have faced, in polyamory, where it may need a disclaimer.
Like PBG loves to talk about trauma and abuse. Maybe this is a space for that.
Yeah, but I don't know if it is a con, right? Like, okay. I will say, so in terms of abuse, and this is something I've started to do workshops and talks about recently, is there are some folks who are abusive and who will enter into non-monogamous community just looking to exploit women, right? And take advantage of the landscape that is available, right? And because kind of non-monogamous community is a fairly small community in terms of resources around recognizing what abuse looks like within the context of non-monogamy, they're very limited. And so when folks are, whether it be domestic violence situations, emotional abuse and whatnot, when folks in the polyamorous community reach out for help, people don't know how to help them, right? Like counselors, social workers, a lot of folks aren't really educated on what non-monogamy looks like. So they're not able to help people that are in abusive non-monogamous situation with any resources or support. And oftentimes,
a relationship is a relationship is a relationship is a relationship. So the fact that they can pick and choose, I don't know how to deal with, abuse I'm a domestic violence counselor. You can't say, okay, well, domestic violence in the polyamorous community. Nah, I can't touch that. That's not, we don't teach that. I never learned that in school. It's still a relationship. The resources are still the resources.
I mean,
really act like they can't.
Well, I actually had this experience with a therapist that I very quickly fired, right? And I was having challenges in a relationship and I wanted to talk about it. And all he heard was that for him, polyamory was the problem. So he wasn't listening to what I was saying about the relationship. He was just like, well, it just sounds like, polyamory is really the issue. So have you ever considered a monogamous relationship? And it's like, that wasn't, my polyamory is not the issue. There were relational things going on that I needed support with, but his personal bias around or lack of knowledge on non-monogamy forced him to say that to me. And so, and I think that's a very common experience for folks.
I wonder, so then what you say?
They're full of shit. There are so many people out here cheating that have 3 and 4 girlfriends, husbands. I mean, they're full of shit. That's okay. That's accepted. And a psychologist and a therapist would be okay if you came in and said, my husband has a side chick, or I'm my boyfriend's side chick.
Exactly.
That's all the advice in the world. But when you say that I live a non-monogamous life, it's like cricket.
Exactly.
And it makes me think about a PBG, whether or not you're aware of any sort of resources that might help people who are non-monogamous or thinking about non-monogamy to maybe navigate these waters, because it doesn't seem like these resources are easily found, but maybe, I don't know, are there I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Instagram especially is phenomenal with polyamorous like educators and influencers. Me, for example, Gabrielle Smith and Gabrielle Alexa, who were both on the Red Table Talk, actually do phenomenal resources. Avita, Kevin Patterson, right? Like there's a lot out there. Polysecure by Jessica Fern is a really, really great book that actually speaks directly to trauma and attachment theory, which is something I think everybody should know, but I think it's very useful for non-monogamous poly relationships.
Let me say this too, because we have this idea, in everything that we do in life, that more is actually better, is that like at the center of polyamory? Like, okay, like, because you asked me the question too. I'm monogamous. You like the first question you asked, but are you satisfied? As if one is not enough. You know, and you heard this expression that more money, more problems, more women, more men, more problems. And Justin, in this spectrum piece that you put together, right, you talked about how you were hurt, that you lost one, right, that you were dealing with, I forgot how many women at the time, but when you lost one, how you felt,
that too. Go ahead.
You felt so hurt, right? Like I'm saying, so how much pain and hurt that you have to go through, especially if you had so many and you would lose so many. Because we have this idea and this notion that more is always better.
Yeah, no,
you love them and they don't want to go into the lifestyle, but like everything about them is dope.
If I have to deal with all of them at the same time like that, more is not always better to me.
Yeah,
like I said, I'm 50, so now I know that more is not always better.
I think it's important here to say a couple things. One, I don't think that more is always better. Because as you mentioned, Kevin, you know, more partners, more grief, you know, more resources going out, whether we're talking about monetary things, whether we're talking about whatever. So I don't think it's always better. But also, I want to emphasize that polyamory doesn't have to be about number.
Right.
It's a relational philosophy or a politic about relationships. So I can be polyamorous and single. I can be polyamorous if I'm in a relationship with one other person. Right. So just because I'm polyamorous, it doesn't mean more. But so I will say to you.
Well, that's totally against against the definition of the word itself, poly, right? Poly means more, right?
Yes, it does.
Or many. Poly means many.
Love.
Okay.
Yes. But that doesn't necessarily mean, right, like that you're in this pursuit for, like, you know, I talk to PPG off cam sometimes, and she says this quote. She says, you know, polyamory is not Pokemon. Right?
You don't have to catch them all.
Right, you're not out here trying to catch them all, right?
It's okay to let some go. You're okay.
You know, it's not Pokemon, and so I really love that because it's not. And so I want to talk a little bit about why more is not always better. So you do lose partners, right?
Because can you include that, Justin? If I ask one question, could you put it in there too?
No. Let him do it one at a time. One question at a time. Go ahead.
Well, he was gonna incorporate it anyway. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, like, you know, so I've lost partners for different reasons, right? Like I've lost partners because we've agreed to separate. I've lost partners that we didn't agree to separate, but they're breaking up with me. But I've also lost a partner to death, right? And so depending upon what loss, people think loss, breakup. No, I mean, once we open ourselves up to love, we also open ourselves up to this possibility for loss, right? And I think that's what makes love such a risky game, right? And those who reap its benefits are heralded, like we applaud them because it is a risky game. And so I don't care how many partners I have at any given time, if I lose any of them to death, right, we might suspect that this is gonna be a mourning process. This is gonna be grieving, right? It's not just like, okay, well, you know, like, I'm not even gonna crack any jokes on this out of the sort of like respect for my late partner. But yeah, so simple. I'll leave it there.
My question was, do you all get to hang out together? Like, do you guys all go to dinner together? Are the guys and the women, are they also forming a friendship, a brotherhood, a sisterhood, to the point that like all of you guys can get together and have a bite or hang out and have movie night? Is it, or do you have individual relationships with each person?
So that depends on the players, right? So in polyamory, there's something called kitchen table polyamory, and then there's parallel polyamory, right?
Goodness
and
gracious.
So kitchen table polyamory is...
I need a manual for this thing. Is there a manual for
I mean, there are resources. There is, I think it's more than two, has a .com, I believe. It has a glossary of terms available for all your polyamorous desires. But kitchen table polyamory is the relationships function as if you were all sitting together at a kitchen table, right? So like you have each other's numbers, you hang out, all of that stuff. But that really depends on whether or not you want to do that, right? Because I've been in situations where, you know, I don't always like my partner's partners. And the word for that is metamors, right? So I don't always like my metamors, right? my partners aren't always attracted to the kinds of people that I would be friends with or date myself, right? And so I don't need to have relationships with them. If I'm so inclined, I will. But I tend to more end up in parallel polyamory. So those relationships exist separately and they don't really have anything to do with one another. But it all depends on what folks want.
I think also it makes it think about our groups of friends, right? We got so many different friends. Some of our friends we can all kick it at a kickback or something. But some of our friends we still keep very separate, not because there's any beef or anything like that. They just have different interests, you know? One person likes hiking.
Different energy.
Yeah, different energy, right? And so it's not intentional. I'm not like, it's not like people have to be keeping their partners away from each other, right? But their partners may just not vibe and their partners may vibe. I'm a little bit different than PBG on this note, is that when I've, like she mentioned, kitchen table where everybody's kind of communal, and then parallel where things are a lot more separate. I've been involved in both styles, and I've found that the communal style is a little bit more manageable for me. Even if we're not all hanging out, for me, it's nice to at least have a group chat where we're maybe scheduling group events. Like, hey guys, we're gonna all go to the Dodger game. Like, how are we getting there? We Ubering or what are we doing, right? Like, or hey, me and Justin were thinking about going to, I don't know, the Grand Canyon, right, on this weekend. Did you have anything on the calendar planned, blah, blah, blah. And so that's easier because without a group chat, for example, it requires me to have the very same conversation in each relationship privately.
Right.
And that does run into this problem that Kevin was talking about, this over expenditure of resources, right? This running thin on bandwidth, right? So you try to consolidate. As many things as you can. Conversations, I think, is the least we can do, right? As far as consolidation goes. So it goes both ways.
Kitchen table's ideal for me, but I'm also not going to pretend like I like somebody if I don't. So
I'm going to follow your page.
Go ahead.
I want to know more about PBG. Follow her page. I got to know. I want to know. Hey, but listen, our hour is up, everybody. 1 hour goes by so fast, and there's so much more that we should be talking about.
Oh,
and,
really?
It may be a part two to this thing, but I'm going to pose this question to PBG, the same question she asked me earlier. Are you satisfied?
Completely. Fully. And right now, I have a handful of relationships. I'm single, right? But I have a handful of relationships that are very, very important to me. Very, very intense, dynamic relationships. And I'm learning so much about myself, right? I have quite an extensive trauma history, right? And these relationships really create the space for me to do deep personal work, right? And so polyamory offers just deep satisfaction for me, like within, right?
Are you in love with any of these people in these relationships?
I'm deeply in love.
With all of them?
I would say I think I have love for all of them. I am deeply in love with one person.
Mm-hmm. So what's the goal of these relationships? So they have separate goals? This is so much, man. This is way different. We got to have a part two to this. What about you, Dr. Clardy, man? You completely satisfied as well?
Yeah. I'm completely satisfied right now. So,
how many girls are you seeing right now, Justin?
Oh man, hey, we don't put that on air. You know what I'm saying?
All right, I'll ask you in a group chat.
Okay, in a group chat.
No, I kid. I would say that right now I have a relationship that I'm really fulfilled in.
Okay.
And so I'll say that. That's what I say, but to protect the identities of the participants.
I love it.
PBG, where can people find you and follow if you want to be found?
And they are probably watching right now, so if they are, shout out.
Say hello. They know who they are. Say hello. You know who you are. I love you. You know who you are.
hey, didn't Usher try that in Confession?
Right, he did. So PBG, if you want to be found, where can people find you?
They can follow my Facebook page, Polyamorous Black Girl, Instagram, Polyamorous Black Girl. Stay away from my Twitter, and also my website, polyamorousblackgirl.com. Polyamorous Black Girl everywhere.
So did we leave anything out? What's the thing that we can possibly leave the audience with tonight that you wanted to get out there tonight?
I think that polyamory is a choice, right? And I think that monogamy should also be a choice. And so I really encourage folks to think about whether or not they have actually chosen monogamy or if they just feel like they must be monogamous. So I'd like to leave folks with that.
All right. And since you're part of this community too, Dr. Clardy, anything from you?
Polyamory is not Pokemon.
Don't have to catch them all.
Don't have to catch them all.
Let them go.
But the game is to catch some, as many as possible, right?
Right. Yeah,
Is that the game?
No, give me a Squirtle, and I'm fine.
What's a Squirtle?
Oh, it's a Pokemon. It's just yeah.
Look at Aishia. What's a
A new sex move?
exactly? Yeah. All right, cool. Well, Dr. Clardy, go and close us out, my brother.
Yeah, man. I appreciate everybody convening tonight. It's been a fun time. I don't know how many Kev, where are we at now? What is this, episode 6 now? I feel like we need like
I labeled it episode 6, but I wasn't quite sure. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure.
This might be at least 5, no? 5?
This could be 5 or 6. I did label it episode number 6 though, but it might be 5. I'm not sure. I'll go back and count.
Well, it's more than 4. We just gonna go with that.
Right, more than 4.
So yeah, it was fitting. I really enjoyed it tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And we will catch you guys in 2 Sundays. And I still haven't been sponsored by McAllen.
You got to at them on your Twitter page and your Instagram.
Oh yeah. Once we blow up, it's I'm gonna be bathing in it, just doing backstrokes like Scrooge McDuck in the McAllen.
I can't.
Well, we see you guys in 2 weeks. We love y'all. Thank you so much for participating, PBG. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.